Okay, awesome. We are live. Welcome everybody to my seminar talk on how to write good essays. My name is Kelsey. I'm a medical student at the University of Toronto, and oh, yeah, I'm here to give a talk about essay writing. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we start. I am recording this talk, and I'll be sharing information that's from my personal experience applying to medical school. And I will also be advertising some of my services or packages at the end. It would be awesome if we could have some people sharing their cameras on. I would love to see some of your lovely faces. And this is a dialogue. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question throughout my seminar, or you can type it into a chat. Otherwise, I will be speeding through things for the first half, and then we can talk about things in some more detail in a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so here's a photo of me at my stethoscope ceremony just about a year ago. I am at the University of Toronto, and that's fitting because I grew up in Toronto. I went to York Mills for high school, and I call the GTA my home. I went to McMaster for my undergrad. I studied health sciences, and I'm currently in my second year at U of T. Um, People love to talk about their stats, so I thought I'd openly share mine, but I'll try to share a little bit about who I am as a person as well. My GPA was rather high, and so my MCAT it was okay, but I had a high Casper, or sorry, a high CARS. Sometimes those two get mixed in my mind. My Casper wasn't that great, but otherwise my stats were relatively strong. And in addition, my extracurriculars, I would say, were fairly strong as well. Um, I applied to medical school 2 times. It took me twice to get in, and I got in during my fourth year of undergrad. Um, I guess a little bit about me. I do really like to teach. I've taught students for, I think, more than 6 years now. I've had a focus mostly on English courses, sort of writing, reading comprehension, essay writing, English language and literature. I also really love music. I like to play the piano. I do a few sports, and I also like to do some journal editorial work. I've done that at McMaster and also continued that at U of T so far, and I'm really enjoying my roles there. Okay, so for today's presentation, I wanted to start off by saying I know the medical school application process can be difficult to navigate. It was stressful for me, and I'm sure you guys know you're in the thick of it right now. So I wanted to clarify some of the mystery behind it because there are things that can be done to prepare your application to be the best it can be. And I wanted to focus today specifically on essay writing. Um, and I have a couple of general pointers. I've helped a number of students over the years, but particularly last year, out of the students that I helped, most of them did get in. So I've had a pretty high success rate with helping students with their essays. So I think sort of my tips come from a solid background. And if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, please send me a message and say you went to my talk or heard it virtually, asynchronously, and I'd love to give you a hand. Okay, so let's get into the meat of things. So why are essays important? Um, Almost all medical schools in Canada require essays as part of your application. I believe McMaster doesn't require essays, but U of T does, Western does, perhaps in other schools in other provinces do, but I'm not too familiar with provinces outside of Ontario. And they're really your first opportunity to showcase to the admissions committee who you are. Where do you come from? What are your goals? What is your character? What experiences do you have? And how do they relate to the field of medicine? How are they going to prepare you to be a great physician down the road? Again, it's one of the first ways that they screen for applicants. So along with your ABS, this would select you to receive an interview. And I guess the purpose of these essays is really to describe who you are outside of your ABS, outside of your reference letters. They're sort of your voice. And so that's why they're actually quite a significant component of your application. Even though they may not be rated as highly as the interview, they are your gateway to the interview. And they are a method for you to stand out among the thousands of applications that admissions will read. We've had some discussion earlier today about the CanMed roles, but I just wanted to reiterate this in the context of essays because connecting your past experiences to the CanMed roles and then stringing everything together to answer the question is really at the heart of your goal for writing these essays. You want to tell memorable stories. We had a talk from Kevin earlier about sort of coming at the interview from a stories angle, but this is also particularly true in essays. You want to be able to make your reader visualize events that have happened in your life and have them feel feelings that you've felt so that they can remember who you are. And so to do that, a starting point is to reflect carefully on how your past experiences are poignant stories to tell, because everyone has a poignant story to tell. You might think, oh, what if I'm not a great writer? You know, I've never really liked English class. That's fine because you have a story to tell, and this is the place where you can tell it. We've talked about this in detail in the last talk, but just to reiterate, a piece of homework that I would suggest everyone in this presentation go home and do is to search up the CanMEDS roles on the Royal College's website and read through all of the bullet points in detail. And then think about how your past experiences could relate to demonstrate those CanMed roles described. And again, U of T evaluates materials according to similar roles, but they're clustered into 4 different groups. So if U of T is a school that you're interested in, definitely look out on their website as well. And I just wanted to sort of demystify this a little bit too. You know, there are some classic sort of roles that a lot of pre-meds have on their application. And this is just to give you an idea. Like, for example, you could be a Frisbee team captain or any sports team captain. You know, that demonstrates that you're a leader. That means you can collaborate in a team. You know, if you play music at the high school, regional, you know, provincial level, whatever, it shows that you're demonstrating professionalism. Because you're showing up to practice every day. You're coming at your craft from sort of a grounded professional lens. It shows that you can collaborate in a team if you're working in an ensemble, for example. If you're doing research, that really demonstrates the scholar CanMed role. So that's kind of self-explanatory, but do think about how exactly it connects to the scholar role by looking at the bullet points on the website. And professional because you're in a workplace setting. So that's a direct demonstration of the professional role. And maybe you've done some advocacy work in the past. Perhaps you've co-founded an organization. Perhaps it's in service of a community that you're particularly passionate about helping. That's an excellent demonstrator of the advocate role. It shows that you're a leader in your community. It shows that you can communicate about the needs of vulnerable populations and so forth. So do a bit of reflection and don't dismay if you feel like, oh, I don't feel like I have, you know, all the CanMed roles. Maybe I haven't demonstrated them thoroughly. I think medical school is a journey for everyone, and that starts from before you even apply to medical school. You know, looking at these CanMed roles now and determining where your gaps is a great way for you to start working on those gaps. You know, you might think, oh, I don't have any research experience. Well, now that you know that, perhaps in the next cycle, you can, in between applying again, you can look for some research positions. I'm gonna get some water. Okay, I'm gonna go into my tips now. Um, so the first tip that I have is kind of a simple one, but it gets missed very frequently. And that's to really reflect on the question. What is the question truly asking? These essay prompts, they come from different angles, and some of them can seem sort of mysterious. They can be a quote, they can be a reference to a text that you've never read before. They could ask you sort of a vague question that you have to define more clearly yourself. But ultimately, what the essays are trying to do is trying to understand, again, who are you? What have you done in the past? And have you shown that you have qualities that will make you a good physician in the future? And you can be creative in your interpretation of the question. Um, Feel free to take an open-ended question and define it more clearly so that you can explain who you are in a more compelling way. So here's an example from the year I applied. This is U of T's brief personal essay number 2. So it reads, what is the purpose of a mentoring relationship? What are the 3 most important elements of a mentoring relationship? Discuss a mentoring situation that you experience in relation to these qualities. And right off the bat, you can see that you only have a maximum of 250 words or 2,000 characters. So each word is like gold here. You want to do a lot of editing so that you can distill the essence of what you're trying to communicate in the limited amount of space that you have. So you can see that potential answers can vary. You can talk about mentoring relationships, perhaps with a coach, with a teammate from a sport that you play. You can go a completely different direction, talking about a mentorship relationship with a supervisor, maybe a research supervisor. Maybe you can deviate from sort of organized experiences altogether and then talk about someone who you helped as a person. And that's a great opportunity to tell a story as well. But no matter which experience you do choose to describe, the most important thing is that you do link everything back to the profession of medicine. Um, Reflecting again on the CanMed roles, we're going to talk about this ad nauseum, but the CanMed roles are so important because they're a way to tie things back to medicine as opposed to nursing, physician assistant, pharmacy, OT, PT, you name it. There are so many other health professions that are um, uh, caring, for other people that require you to be empathetic, that require you to be reliable, a team player. But why specifically medicine? Does anyone have any questions at this point? If not, I will just keep going with my tips. Okay, I will keep trucking. So my second tip is a little bit different from our talk earlier about the ABS section of the application, where you kind of have to be explicit about the roles that you're communicating through each activity. Um, the essays are where you give detail and color and life to the stories that you're describing. Um, Very often I read essays where students don't go into enough detail about their internal motivation. Like, what were the events that precipitated you, that inspired you to take action to make positive change in your community? What did you do specifically to help someone in need? And how did that specifically impact that person's life? They need to be your actions that you're describing as opposed to other people's. And if you are making an impact, ensure that it's an impact that your organization had or that you had personally, and not that of somebody else's organization, because that makes me think maybe I should admit that person to medical school, um, to say it frankly. And ultimately, I've said this before, but again, you want to create an impression that makes the reader come to the conclusion themselves about your character. You want to create a story that makes your reader think, wow, this person is compassionate. I want them to be a part of the class of 2029. Their experience overcoming adversity and challenges in their life makes me think that they're a perseverant person. And you get the idea. You don't want to simply say um, that I care about other people and I want to support them. And we talked about this already, but everyone has a story to tell, right? Um, so in terms of reflecting on your journey, I know that we're already a little bit of ways into this year's application cycle, but it's never too late to start reflecting about particularly memorable experiences that you've had that motivates you to apply to medical school. Um, think back to those moments in your life where you thought to yourself, wow, that really changed me as a person. Or, wow, that really shaped me to want to pursue medical school, to become a doctor in the future. Because there will be those moments. I mean, you're here now today. And so you're thinking about medical school, obviously. So you must have an answer as to what led you here. And then more specifically, I think it's very valuable to think about experiences in which you've shown leadership um, in your community, in your family, even in your school. Leadership can take many forms, right? Initiative, so experiences where you saw a change that you could make around you, a positive change, and you took action to make that happen. Experiences where you really helped someone else in a time of challenge or need. Um, Experiences where you offered active service to your community. These are all super valuable talking points to highlight and emphasize. And they can take many forms, right? Like the medium can vary, but the story, I think, is at the heart of what you're trying to communicate. It doesn't exactly matter, whether you help someone abroad volunteering or whether it was like locally at home. It was the heart behind it that really matters. And my next tip is to be concrete. And that means to incorporate experiences from your resume. So your ABS elements, we had a whole presentation on crafting your ABS. And here's where you reference your citations. We're all academic students. So we know that we have to back up our claims with concrete factual evidence. And it's factual because you have verifiers to back up what you've said. But now you can link everything together. So we've talked about, brainstorming CanMED roles that apply to each activity. And I wanted to, oh, sorry, I'm going too fast. I wanted to show how this looks like. So you want to verify the number from your ABS entry into your essay. I know this is how it's done for U of T, but I'm not particularly sure about other schools. It would be helpful to confirm for other schools. But let's say you're referencing, a volunteering experience. You can say, I was inspired by such and such a story or such and such a patient story that I had when I was volunteering abroad. So I came home and I co-founded this organization to help advocate for this vulnerable population. I'm being very generic here, and you'd obviously fill in those generic space fillers with concrete details, but then you reference that at the end. And then another way you can be specific with your impact, maybe you haven't had the space to be as elaborate in your ABS. You can use the space in your essays to be even more specific about the impact that you had. So let's say you empowered a team of 30 people. You can say, with the support of, let's say, 30 generous student volunteers, we raised a specific X amount of money to support whatever cause. And this gives a concrete impact for your reader to note, and that's really important because it helps reduce some of the fluff behind essay writing that I see very often. And that brings me to my last point or tip, which is just the importance of editing. I've tutored English for many years, and I've edited so many essays, and people or students have this misconception that writing takes up, let's say, 80% of your time, editing 10 to 20. But I would beg to offer an alternative that editing should take up the same amount of time, if not more time, than your original writing. I would encourage you to write more than you think you would need for your essay, maybe even twice as much, and then cut down half of it because you're going to write things that don't need to make the final cut. And if you're only writing, a few drafts and not putting in the editing, you're not um, reaching your full potential, essentially, in terms of communicating through your writing. So start your essays as soon as you can, preferably the day, it's released, and spend some time reflecting and thinking about how to best answer the question. So going back to earlier means, deciphering the question, thinking about what lens to come at it. Think about what experiences you can draw from your resume, um, and how to tie everything back to the CanMed rules and the profession of medicine. You can ask other people to review your drafts. Almost everyone does this. I think it's valuable to get others people's input. So that could be friends, mentors. You can reach out to organizations like Accepted Together, where we offer like services to help you review your drafts. And personally, I actually wrote 12 drafts of my UFT essays, which sounds a little bit excessive, but I guess it worked. So what I'm saying is you might need to go back to the drawing board multiple times. And I think having like the humility, at least personally, I found that having the humility to say, okay, this draft doesn't really answer the question. I'm gonna toss it completely away, or maybe take only a couple things that worked from it, and then write some better drafts going forward. Um, so common mistakes with essays. I just wanted to touch on this briefly too. So, you know, editing is important because it helps with concision and brevity. Remember, you only have very limited space to show who you are. So you need to ensure that every word that you write helps to communicate either your character, a CanMed role, relation to medicine, or to describe some sort of feeling or emotion that will help, make your essay stand out and be memorable. So you want to avoid, and all fluff needs to be cut out. um, and the second point is describing what other people have done instead of your own. Like I think as an applicant, this can be a little bit challenging because we tend to be nice people and we want to highlight how great our co-founder was in making our organization a success. Um, but this application is about you. Like the admissions committee wants to know who you are and not who your supervisor is. So make sure that you focus on your own motivations, actions, impact, etc. Um, I think cliches don't help you distinguish yourself from the crowd. So try to be original in your essays, but particularly your openings. I think starting off your essay with something that will really catch your reader's attention without being trite will help catch your attention, catch the reader's attention right away. Not answering the question prompt is another common mistake. People can go on a tangent and then not focus everything back. But I think this, like in the context of med school application essays where things can be a little bit vague in terms of defining the question, you do want to be very stringent in your approach and your organization to ensure that you are directly answering the question prompt. And if it's not clearly defined enough, you need to define it more clearly yourself so that you can answer the question effectively. And obviously make sure that you've eliminated any spelling or grammar errors. So as for myself, I've done a lot of English tutoring and editing in the past, and I'm happy to keep doing that, but in the context of medical school now that I'm at this stage in my career. So I'm happy to help with that, but also just to consult on med school applications in general. People are at different stages, and sometimes it's helpful to just have a conversation about how things are going, and hear some general advice. I'm happy to edit your ABS as well. They are a little bit different in terms of the style of editing, but I'm happy to lend a hand with that as well. And come interview season, I would also be happy to lend my time there, because as our prior speaker alluded to today, interviews are really just another way to write essays, albeit a little bit with higher stakes because you don't have the option to edit as extensively. It's kind of a one shot, that's it environment. So my inbox is open on Accepted Together. Feel free to reach out. And I wanted to end with some encouragement. I think, personal statement writing is inevitably connected with other components of the application to med school. Um, the process of writing really helps you process, what lessons have I learned to date? What have I done to date? Really, like who am I in the context of applying to medical school? This will help you with your interviews, and it will also help you in your career down the line more generally because the self-reflection component of medical training is actually very important, and it's continuous. Like even today, in med school, I'm still being asked to write reflections about experiences that I've had over the last year. How does it connect to the CanMed roles? Like the CanMed roles never go away. I'm going to be reflecting on the CanMed roles probably for a very long time, if not my whole career. Um, and I just wanted to also say that enjoy the process because you are all such stars in your own individual unique ways, and this application cycle, or maybe the next one if you don't feel super ready this cycle, is where you can show off all the amazing things that you've achieved over the last few years, maybe since even when you were younger. I know it's like the ABS is valid in terms of including activity since you were 16. So you've done so much work, and this is the place where you can shine and continue to achieve your goals. So best of luck, and thank you so much for listening. Um, our uh, our group of consultants in general can be found on the website. So if you're looking for other sets of eyes, you can also take your camera and scan the QR code there. There are so many amazing, talented, eager, competent tutors who are willing to help you achieve your med school goals. But otherwise, I'm good to answer any questions that our audience has.